There's no perfect time.
Yeah, no, there's no. Well, okay. Even if there's not a perfect time, there's like a better way to do it. Then there's like, please don't do that ever again, because yeah, too many issues. And for me, there's like point A, then I go all these different side trails because like I'm great with the side conversations, but the main point is
Okay, so
yeah. This whole thing, I was like, this is my impression of what we were going to meet up for. Let's talk about, well, with Tyson, but he's busy with his son. I was going to say healing. I want to say like 3 years old. Like,
oh, so
he's a midget.
He's adopted.
No, he's a midget. He's short.
No, him and I are the ones adopted, yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. He has two sons.
Yeah,
The
two
one that was
sons,
here
yes.
earlier was the one that's like 20-ish?
Yes, 23.
20, yeah,
So
20.
his story is amazing.
Yes, he
Yeah.
went through a bad situation. I'm not going to share everything about his story because only immediate conversation is his story, but he had to do some not so savory things to make it for a good while. And then once he started changing his mentality, changing where he was at, and truly adopting like a true understanding of reality and submitting himself to truth instead of like what he's been trying to pursue, this fictional whatever status he was pursuing, he abandoned that and disciplined himself to get himself out of the situation. And now he wants to help out others.
Apologies, we should probably do introduction here so other people
Okay.
know who's
Go
talking.
for it. You go for it.
This is me, Dave. The whole In His Mind YouTube channel. So there's that. But whatever you guys are feel comfortable with as far as like who's talking, who's what.
Hi, my name is Manuel Pittman. I'm Northside Presbyterian Church. I do outreach and care for them, and I'm excited for a conversation.
I'm Parker. I'm with the LDS Church, and just here to share philosophies, have an open mind, and simply just share thoughts and find a common understanding, a common path.
You and me have talked a couple times, which was great. It really was.
I didn't want to. I knew he has a certain thought. But I wanted to finish the other thought. I wanted to connect it back to you. So I was about evolution in light of what you were talking about, and then the fear that you talked about. So I actually do agree with your fear in light of the imagination, the science fiction thing you're watching on Netflix about continuing our life with technology.
The moral, ethical, like, and then the botched areas where
Yes.
it's like, in theory, this looks great, but in practice, how is this going to be carried out?
In the Bible, it says, man has become like us. Should he continue to eat of the tree of life, that he should continue on living. Something like that. Genesis chapter 3, because now Adam and Eve both ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And in Genesis 3, God is talking with the divine council, and he's saying, man has become like us. Should he continue to carry his hand forward and continue to eat the tree of life and live forever? So
I can look it up.
That idea of living forever was not meant to be in the fallen state, because if it's in the fallen state, it's a terrifying reality. And so that's why God banished mankind from heaven and earth united outside of the Garden of Eden. And the whole story of the Bible is to get back to the Garden of Eden. We do want eternal life, but we want eternal life with restored relationships. If you keep losing those relationships, that's the terror that science fiction brings us into, because that's the same thing that God himself, with talking to the angels, the divine council, was saying, this is not good, that man live forever in the corrupted state. And so that's why we seek redemption or healing, which you wanted to get into later, about restoring those relationships, heaven on earth restored in the new Eden.
I would just go keep it simple and say fellowships.
Yeah.
Because we're all going to care about something, but it's not necessarily going to be... Okay, even if we're going to care about the same thing, it's going to be done differently. We're all going to care about something, even if it's different.
Sure. But you had a certain thought you wanted to chase.
Yeah.
So, as far as like the evolution of species, or even human species, so you said you don't believe in certain species like mixing with each other.
Right.
Okay, so
The term, like mule, the horse and help me out here, a donkey, when they mingle together, a mule, by the literal definition, is an abomination. It can't reproduce. It's a mutation that should not exist. And so that's why when you have any mutation of species, they can't keep going forward. It stops by nature itself.
okay, so even with two species that are related, they can be in the same category, like a lion or a tiger. They should not. You feel they should not mate.
Correct.
Even though it has happened.
It has, just like a horse and a donkey. They both happen, and that's why whatever they make is an abomination. It can't reproduce on its own because it's unnatural.
It's unnatural. Okay, so
The genetic aspect changes it because it's not that it was not natural. It never happened, oh my word, no, that would still be an abomination.
Yes.
Ooh.
But go on. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
So when you bring it to a human level, when two humans from two ethnicities come together,
Sure.
and create something, in a way you create a new species.
Sure.
So
I actually would disagree with that. Not new species.
Well, a particular aspect, or ethnicity or whatever.
Sure.
Would you consider that an abomination?
No.
Why not?
Because if I take your blood sample and my blood sample, I cannot tell if you're black. I can tell about Latino. Now, if I take it between me and a woman, I can tell by blood sample what's a woman, what's a man.
And bone
but you can't
structure.
tell.
Bone
And bone
structure.
structure, yeah. You can tell all that, but like when it comes to color, it's just our body reacting to the sun. It's about how much melanin we have in our skin. That is no differentiation on what it means to be an ethnicity.
No, wrong. Well, that's not what I'm saying. So again, like I said, a tiger and a lion, they're pretty much in the same category, as far as
No.
being
Species.
a certain species.
No.
And wow,
So a lion and a tiger, by what it is, when they mate together, that's not a normal aspect because lions intermingle with lions, tigers intermingle with tigers. In unique circumstances, when you cut them off from one another, they still want to do nature. Same thing with a horse and a donkey. I like the lion-tiger illustration. Never would have thought of that one because the horse and donkey was the most common one. Because when you cut them off from their species, they still want to procreate, but it stops because they can't keep procreating in that way because the abomination ends that cycle. Therefore, they're not the same species.
My friend.
When you have other aspects of human beings that are cut off from one another, it doesn't stop them from procreating. But
They're not
when
different species.
But when they travel over history and they mix and mingle,
Okay.
and it gives that other ethnicities are created because of that.
I agree with you, but I'm trying to the foundation of your argument. Where are you getting the whole different species of human beings?
Because in a way, the way I interpret it, just like you have different species of cats, just like they may be distant related, but they're still considered different species, but they're still considered in the same overall, the cat species.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, even though we may be all considered human.
Okay.
The human rate. There's still different aspects. There's still different categories of the human race. They can be considered different species.
This is
like
helpful. Okay.
you have all Asiatic. You have Caucasian. You have African. When they're all separated by geographical or boundaries of the planet or whatever at the time. When all the Caucasians, they all mix and mingle. They do their thing. Same thing with Latino, they all mix and mingle. And I guess the example of this, a new species or quote new ethnic group is created. For example, when you go over to the Philippines, you look at their genetics. Their genetic foundation is of the Spaniards.
They're divided. Felines are divided into subfamilies. That was something that my friend was telling me about when I did the whole video on evolution. She was talking about subfamilies of this stuff.
Well, yeah, in science, like a term species and a category are ultimately
When they
things.
break it
Cat
down
would be
further.
a category. Species is what they. Again, usually science has a longer name for every single thing. Where would be Homo sapiens? There's like a technical name for a species, but when you say cat, it's a category, not a species. So that's another technicality. Go.
Yeah.
I mean, I like what you're saying. Keep going.
So pretty much what I'm saying is like when you traverse when different aspects of the human race traverse go across different parts of the planet and they meet other individuals, again, if it happens long enough, you're going to create a new category. If you want to be technical, you're going to be a new category of the human race or ethnicity, species, whatever.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So And under that circumstance, it's not necessarily true that certain things, like when another, like say with the Philippines, when they're a mixture of Spaniards and something, I forgot what it was, but nevertheless, they created a new a new category, a new species, a new culture,
Sure.
and it's now thrived to this day. Now, what you're saying, what you've said before, under certain conditions, yeah, certain things probably cannot and should not be allowed to continue. So just and again going back to the evolution or the evolution of the human species. If you believe in Neanderthals and cavemen and all that stuff,
Sure.
because of the environment that we're in on this planet, certainly it forces our body to change.
How much sun to get, things like that, yeah.
Again, say the atmosphere, like say when you're over Africa, it's super hot. Everything.
You need more melanin.
Your body's gonna mutate and change to adapt to the environment. If you're in a super cold environment,
You don't need that melanin.
you're gonna be light skinned. Your eyes gonna turn blue. And you're gonna adapt. Yes.
There's three things. One, the rainbow, which was scientifically, if I remember correctly, tied to the pink layer that when the flood happened supposedly took away, and it ended up affecting our lifespan. Two, what you said months ago as far as with vitamin deficiency and not getting the nutrients that we need could also play a part, not just in our lives, but in future later down the roads. This is on top of anything else, cancer, whatever, because radiation, all that permanently affects our genes. It will affect kids.
It's mutating you, yeah.
Mutating, yes, there's that. I want to say the third factor, I'm blanking on the third factor, is the third one though. If I remember, I'll bring it up later.
Okay. But that's how I see things as far as when you say I lost what you said. Was that one sentence that triggered it? But anyway, we do evolve as a species, and I would say different categories of the human species, or say Caucasian, African, quote Latino.
Sure. Some become isolated. They become tribes out in Australia.
It's like when they're isolated, yeah, they thrive.
Sure.
But but again, like I said, it's just natural as we migrate and we move around. You're going to create different subcategories or subspecies of the human race. You're going to have, you're going to have mulatto. You're going to, a mixture of black and white mix. You're going to have in my opinion, certain ethnic groups have been confined too long, and they all look alike, and you can't tell them apart. Where genetic diversity needs to happen.
Did the Tower of Babel happen around the time of Pangea when the planet, the crust, everything was together? Because some of that may actually tie into this diversity.
So before
part.
we jump, I do want to.
I'm sorry if I'm jumping.
That's good. Because there's one thing to touch before that is the image thing, because the image thing is going to determine how we understand that.
Okay.
What does it mean to be created? Or first off, do you affirm that mankind is created in the image of God?
Do I affirm that? I'll say. Well, I'll play. I'll just say yes.
Okay. What does that mean?
That was
I was like, okay, this is such a.
It's not meant to cause issues or to trap you or anything like that.
No. So, because I was gonna. I should have went my instincts. Because I was like, well, you don't know what the image of God is looking like.
Okay.
So that was my initial response. So, or because we could throw it back. It was like, was God created? Was man created the image of God, or was God created the image of man? So because it's like
that's what Darwin would say, right?
So.
Yeah.
I wonder if the AI Bible has.
I do have a unique answer. I was just curious what yours was.
Okay, right. Do I believe man is created the image of God? And okay, so why?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Does the AI channel have an image of God? I'm curious.
Would why or how be a better question?
I'll put it to you like this: it's easy to say yes, just by default, just by out of upbringing
Sure.
and stuff like that. Now, why? Because we don't have another frame of reference. That's why.
Yes. Now, I'm actually in agreement with you on that. So, the image of God, the way that I would understand that, that's actually kind of interesting. Yeah.
The AIs, there's a whole bunch of AI generated stuff, but there's nothing with like image of what God could possibly look like. I will.
And to the people listening, I think you just pull up AI images of Jesus is pretty wild.
Well, there's an AI. Okay, I am subscribed to the channel for the AI. It's here somewhere. AI Bible channel. I gotta find it here. I have like 300 channels I've subscribed to.
But let me finish my thought. The image of God, I believe that's more of a title. It's more of a designation than a literal term. For example, the image of God, I believe we are the imagers of God. We've been tasked with the role of imagers of God. So for people to know who God is, well, we display that by our very existence. The idea of being his image bearers, we're called to take dominion of the world, like the dominion mandate. We rule the world. Go ahead, sorry.
We found it right here. Biblically accurate God in Revelation in the AI Bible channel.
You sent me that one, yeah?
Yeah.
I remember that one. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, so I'll link that channel down below there, because if you're looking for interesting, possibly biblically accurate, quote-unquote, images as far as what's in the Bible, this is a good idea to... Well, what's a phrase? Good idea to
get your mind thinking on something.
It's a good visual representation.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
There we go.
That'd be the way I would take that. Like we're called to image God. When people look at mankind, that's how people get to know who God is, through mankind.
Yeah.
We rule the world, care for it as the Creator is doing for all things. That's what Adam and Eve were tasked with, being king and queen. I think the phrase that Presbyterians like to use is prophet, priest, and king. Jesus is the full realization of that. We're prophets in the oracle of God. God has spoken to us. Priests, we're caretakers of the garden of the world. And then kings, we rule it. We have dominion over it and how we steward the world.
Yeah, or like I said, to put it in different, simpler language, our physical being gives God form. The actions we take gives God performance.
I love that, actually. That's way better than what I said.
Run that by me.
I love that, yeah.
Run that by me one more time here.
I was going to say, through our physical being, we give God form. Through the actions that we take, we give God performance.
Performance.
Opportunities? How do we understand who God is? By,
okay, there we go.
He rules through us, and so we're the form.
We're the conduit.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Which God rules.
Which God rules.
I'm looking at...
God needs people to speak his words, to run his actions, to feed his people. That's how that happens through our form.
It's what care for the animals and things like that.
The action we take, we give his work performance.
I'm seeing that more as it makes more sense now. Thank you. I understood that differently. So yeah.
But I didn't want to know if you had a way you were taking that before we go to the Tower of Babel. But I wanted to know if you would have anything else. That's what if we could start with that, then mankind has been tasked with something unique. So challenge evolution again. For anything to evolve to that would challenge what does it mean to be imager of God. God made Adam from the ground, made him a unique creature like he did everything else for this purpose. But if that's not how it happened, if somehow evolution caused some being to somehow manifest the image of God, then what would that mean about the image of God? Is it something that's attainable or something that's only granted to us by our Creator?
It could be hijacked too.
Okay, yeah.
It can be manipulated, which it has been over the years.
Sure.
We've always go ahead.
I was going to say the biblically accurate image of Lucifer before he fell. I was just like, anyone who sees that is going to be like, he's God. Holy jeez. The AI Bible, I feel like they nailed that on the head right there.
Well, Jesus and Lucifer both refer to as the fallen star. So
we'll come back to that one.
We'll come back.
Yeah.
I know Lucifer is, but I actually would also disagree.
No, not fallen star.
Morning Star. Yes.
My same friend who was talking about saying like his name in the Bible, with people lumped together as far as it's Lucifer, it's Satan, but she's saying she believes it goes by a different name, which I saved somewhere. I'll pull that up because that's a whole interesting topic.
Yeah. The simple thing I'll say to that is Lucifer simply is a royal term. It's just royalty holds that.
Yes.
The Pharaoh saw himself as God on earth.
She mentioned that, yeah.
He's Lucifer. So Jesus, I can work with the term if we're being very literal about it, is that he is the morning star. He is the ruler of the cosmos.
She's like you. She's literal.
Yeah.
Well, like the literal translation of Lucifer is the light.
Yeah,
So,
and that's only in context, not actually to Satan. It's in context to a king that was about to fall. The prophet wrote that term to show how high and mighty this guy thinks he is, and he's about to fall because he's going for what he did against the people of Israel.
If you were made to fit a position where you were literally second in command, that's really hard to resist.
Yes.
Because it's like, this is your position, this is your identity, this is who you are. You are literally number 2. The problem there is we don't know all the factors of where he went from being who he was to who he
Where he
is.
became. Yeah.
Yeah, where he became. That's
are you
what
referring to Lucifer? Who was your?
We're talking about Hasatan, the evil of all evils, Satan. I can work with that term. I think that's a better term.
keep it generic
Because again, Lucifer is really, I would actually argue that in the scriptures, Old and New Testaments, Book of Mormon's a little different, I think, but the Old and New Testament, the term Lucifer is never designated to the devil.
Nope,
It's
no, it's
never
not.
is.
No, the
fallen star.
Our interpretation is that just like that may be it might be not an accurate analogy, but just like no, never mind.
You good.
Satan is a minion of Lucifer. Period. They like to mix them together. They like to intermix them together, but the individual or the demon or the entity known as Satan is a minion of Lucifer. They're two separate beings.
In the Book of Mormon, that's what he's dealing with. Yeah.
They're not the same. They're not the same. They're commonly mixed together. Or like they interchange them, but they're two separate beings. They really, like I said, Satan is subservient to Lucifer.
There are some names as far as like who
There's
Baal,
yeah.
and there's something else that like the names got crossed over, and it's what the names people would associate with today were not who they were associated with back in the biblical times.
Yes.
There is that.
There's always technicality with names, like the oldest, the first name for the evil being of Satan. I'm going to say the primary evil being, that we can be consistent on something, right? The primary evil being that's against God and his universe. The first name we get is the serpent, or the shining one. They can be interpreted both ways, right? We talk about Genesis 1, or Genesis chapter 3. But then after that, you have Satan, a member of the divine council in the book of Job, who goes and tempts Job. And then his name is, actually before then, his name is Azazel in Leviticus chapter 16 and 17. Because he's the god of the wilderness that the goat was sent off to. But then John puts them together and says the great dragon and this old serpent of old. He puts them together as being the main evil one. So that's the names that we see. Now, what we take from that can be different, but we see Satan is the one that tempted Jesus in the wilderness. He is the one that did that. Satan is the one that possessed Judas to betray him.
Do you think there's a thought there with the what you said about Satan possessing Judas? But let me go back to that in a second. Do you think there's any do you think there's any correlating anything from correlating books outside of the Bible that could add some light to this? Because I've heard that the Watchers from the Book of Enoch could compare or even be some of the same entities here.
So I want to get back to that one because that will relate to Genesis chapter 11 about the Tower of Babel. But
go for it.
So we'll get back to that in a way. We'll answer that, then we'll come back to that.
Then give me 10 seconds with the whole Judas and
Go for it.
being possessed. If Judas believed that he was going to get power, there was a promise made, there was a pact of some kind, by all means, he's going to be a willing vessel to get, the greater will done, whatever that looked like.
Sure.
Because he believed. He was a Judas the Iscariot.
Yes.
He was a part of an organization that was trying to bring about.
Well, the Zealots were the ones that were the revolutionaries.
He was a revolutionary. He was trying to bring something about. That's all I was trying to get to. So, hey, I'll be a vessel for boom. Have this happen, I'll be the vessel. Like, that's how that could have happened. Because otherwise, possession for someone in Jesus'
cabinet,
passe, his followers, that would never happen.
God. Yeah, I agree. It shouldn't have happened.
We all want to be a vessel for something greater for those who care about the spiritual life.
But he misunderstood what Messiah meant, and he wanted a Messiah.
Bingo.
He wanted a
Now,
conquering rule.
here, now, boom,
Yeah.
today.
And Jesus said, "My kingdom is not like the kings of this world." But image bearer of God, that's where we're at, and we want to. It's actually going to relate to that at some point. But getting it to the Tower of Babel, if we define mankind, would you affirm that God uniquely made Adam and Eve, and all species, all mankind, came from them, or would you say all mankind came from several different common ancestors?
Talk about a lot of interbreeding right there. I'm sorry. I'll stop.
Yeah. There's a reason. There's a fundamental reason that I would affirm one over the other. But I'm just curious where you would be at that.
So you do affirm.
I have to, by another theological concept, that I believe we don't just descend from our parents by body. We descend from our parents by spirit as well. The body is just material, right? Material, it's in the universe. But if we descend both body and spirit, that unites us to our parents in a fundamental way. In Genesis 3, the fall of mankind was a spiritual and physical fall. Primarily actually spiritual, because the physical could have actually continued if it wasn't for God cursing mankind. God cursed mankind, and that's when the physical came into play. The spiritual was rebelling against his will and eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil is not just like, oh, I know what bad is now. That's not what it's talking about. We can know what's right and wrong without ever having to do something wrong. For example, should you learn that a stove is hot by putting your hand on it and burning yourself? No. You can know it's not to, you're told not to do it, you know it's wrong, you stay away from it. But the problem is, in the Garden of Eden, we learned about guilt and shame. That was brand new. The experience of evil. That's what we gained was brand new, the guilt and the shame of that.
The experience was, I want to say, do you think the experience was branded onto the person and then to maybe the blood of Adam and Eve?
So it's a spirit. I mean, I can work the term blood. The term blood in the Bible meant to be served about life. We're united to them by life. And so from Adam and Eve, everybody continuing in them by natural generation, by their own body and spirit, obtain original sin. And so Jesus, the whole idea, the term John chapter 3, about being born again, the whole idea is to absolve yourself of where you were originally born in Adam, and now you're born in Christ. You are restored to your original nature in who Adam was before the fall. But actually, truly, if you really understand that, it's even better than that, because Jesus is, I would argue, is God. And we would disagree on that. We'll get into that later. But affirming that Jesus is a brand new person, new reality, we're united to his nature, not Adam's anymore. And you're born new, a brand new spirit.
I was going to say the blood of Jesus is tied in there somewhere, because if this is coming from ex-witches, ex-warlocks, people who used to follow, they had pacts or whatever. But the thing is, A, prayer, they talk so much about, and B, the blood of Jesus, as far as not just simply being born again, but we are trying to emulate, we're trying to follow Jesus, and therefore the blood of Jesus covers our own, and they went into a description
guilt
of that.
And shame. And
I feel like there's importance there somewhere, but I am lacking the words on how to do that justice.
We'll definitely come back to like how does Jesus' blood forgive us. Again, the term that the Hebrews or the Greeks are using there. Well, it's actually the Hebrews are writing in Greek, but I'll get back to that. The whole idea of the blood there is the idea that his life is being given for us. Like we do believe he was an actual body, actual human that died and he shed his blood. But the shedding of the blood was the purposes of him dying. He's giving his life, and it's through his life we are saved.
And that's where affinity could lie, because if Jesus' life expands until whenever he lets go of it, and we have a part of that, okay, that's interesting.
United to a new nature, yes. But because of that, because I would affirm the body and soul hypothesis, because the term for that, again, me a seminary student, is traducianism. But the term of the idea that we descend from parents with body and soul shows our need for salvation, then I can't affirm Darwinian evolution. Because what I'm affirming is that all mankind is descending from these people. And that's what makes the second fall, before we get to Genesis 11, Genesis chapter 6 first. Because the whole abomination thing is also understood spirit and physical with the sons of God and the daughters of men.
Genesis chapter 6, or is it?
Genesis chapter 6 is relating back to First Enoch, the one you were quoting, about the sons of God, the daughters of men. Because the angels came down to make an abomination, truly go against
Chapter 6.
Genesis chapter 6, yep.
Remember what verse?
I'm not sure. I think it's earlier on. I think that much.
It talks about Nephilim in verse 4. There were
Yes.
Nephilim, blah, blah, blah.
But before the Nephilim, they're the offspring. They're the abomination from the sons of God and the daughters of men. Because when the angels engaged with these corrupt practices where two things should not meet, they made the Nephilim, the giants, the creatures. And so the whole point of the flood was to restore what God created and destroy the
You're
abomination.
referring to the Nephilim, are those the one-eyed entity?
No, those, so the one-eyed thing, that comes more from Greek mythology, the idea of Kronos, or Kronos. Yeah, that's where that's coming from. That's from Greek mythology. The idea in Hebrew, I want to say mostly history, but I can work with the word mythology here. Hebrew mythology, the idea of a Nephilim is just being, it's also translated in the book of Joshua, giant. So you have these monster beings that are abominations of both spiritual and physical realities from sons of God, angels, and the daughters of men. And so the idea is to stop these abominations, because the abominations are bad in two ways. One, they shouldn't exist. And first, by their very existence, it's against God's creation. And number two, they corrupted mankind. Book of First Enoch, and I'm careful here because I usually, my faith is constructed by the Old and New Testaments, but appealing to the book of Enoch because Judas and St. Peter both quote from it to help us understand more of the story. And the point of it was that they corrupted mankind in teaching them evil ways, like the idea of over-sexualizing yourself or violence in more ways more effective at it. And so their destruction needed to be fulfilled in the flood. And so because of that, mankind restarted again with just Noah and his family. But there's still corruption in mankind. And because of that corruption, that man kept wanting to embrace itself because of the new things that it learned, like Noah and his family, they came together to rebel against God. Instead of doing the dominion mandate of ruling the world, they're going to make their own world.
When you said Kronos, what is that linked to? Because I'm looking up Kronos.
Kronos, he was the father of the Greek gods. Yes.
This is Greek mythology. Okay, so I got to look that up as far as...
But getting us to Genesis chapter 11, which I'm also going to lay Deuteronomy 32, because Genesis 11 and Deuteronomy 32 tell the same story from two different angles. When Noah and his family, they started repopulating, and evil in the world started to rise to, what's the term, raise its head. That whole aspect of that, mankind rebelled against the dominion mandate and chose to be in one place and make their own reality rather than embracing God's reality. And so what God did is confuse their languages. And so in confusing their languages, they started to spread out and only unite with people that spoke similar languages. So even going back to the other conversation, I would say mankind did not reject each other for purposes of just geographical differences. It was language differences because of what God, his just judgment against them doing what they just did. And so what happened after that, in Deuteronomy 32, elaborating on the story, it says that mankind was given over to the sons of God. The angels, they were given rule over mankind at these different locations, but they ruled unjustly. And so, and because of that, Yahweh's portion, he chose Abraham. That's why he used him and his progeny to carry on the divine story. Now that's the worldview that I would go off of from Genesis chapter 1 to 11. But if we bring evolution into that, it changes all of it. Everything I just mentioned loses its fundamental premises as based in Genesis chapter 1 through 11. Because how the story is told gives us a framework of how we understand mankind's story going forward. And if we break that chain with evolution or different mingling of species of who should be related to one another, it changes what it means to be an image bearer of God. And so because of these things, how we understand the navigation of what is our purpose in the world and where is the next, where are we going to, our eschatology, it must be rooted in how we understand Genesis. And I think the Book of Mormon changes that, because it goes back to Genesis chapter 11 of saying making our own reality, our own cosmos is a good thing, when Genesis 11 it says bad thing. It's a matter of submitting to God's reality, how he is determining the cosmos, and we as his image bearers take the meaning of his world to rule on his path.
Just quick question. Do you think Greek mythology ties in here with anything from the Bible besides?
That would be more appealing to the New Testament when St. Paul Acts, I think it's Acts chapter 17. St. Paul and is it Barnabas? They are in the Galapagos, and they have there's the statue of the unknown God, and they were appealing to that to say, hey, I actually know this God, and he's the God who created all other gods. And he uses it as an apologetic to engage the people in that area with a conversation.
So I can look that verse up, but I can also, I typed in Greek mythology in the Bible, but I was wondering if there was anything that would pop up from that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, but I know what you're talking about with that, worshiping the unknown God. There is that altar that was there.
Yeah.
Would
any of what I just mentioned be against the LDS Church?
From my perspective, no. I'm gonna say because that's one thing that we're solid on is like choose. You can believe as you wish. You know.
Interesting. How does that work practically, though?
We don't. No, as far as like me to you, I'm not gonna contradict what you're saying.
Okay.
Because if that's how you believe it, that's what you interpret it. We're fine with that. We the ones like this, the members of our church who truly believe, we stand fast to the teachings, the gospel. Not just the LDS teachings or the Book of Mormon, Book of Mormon or Book of Mormon, but also the teachings of Jesus Christ. So we don't. A lot of people like to say we separate them, where the Book of Mormon and the book and the Holy Bible complement each other.
Okay.
So, and I guess it's kind of like the
historical and the biblical.
I feel that the Book of Mormon is going through the same trials and tribulations and condemnation that the New Testament went through. So before there was the New Testament, it was just the Old Testament or the original Testament.
Yeah.
You just had God the Father. Then all of a sudden someone came along and introduced this individual named Jesus Christ, and I'm the Son of God, and he introduced this book or these books to come. So this is now the New Testament, and so now, this is the testament of Jesus Christ. And so now, what happens? You have people who shunned him, and condemned him, and condemned the apostles, killed him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that happened for thousands of years until now it finally became mainstream. And so now, what do? You combine the original or Old Testament with the New Testament. Okay, so now you combine them together because now over just a period of time or evolution, it's just now become accepted.
I'm working with you. It's the only thing that the New Testament does quote a lot of the Old Testament.
So now here comes
that's because
another
of the
testament
apostles.
of Jesus Christ.
The apostles and other people quote from prophecies and that from history. Yeah.
Over time, you can make it work. You've got thousands of years to blend and make it work. And when initially they were these two different entities, but now over time, you start going back and forth, and you bring it together. And now it works. Now it's like you said, it's not even a question. It is what it is. So now here comes another testament of Jesus Christ. And so now, we've only been around for a mere 200 years.
That was always the United States.
So little about as old, maybe a little less. So now, I feel we're going through the same thing. You're false, you're this, you're that, blah, blah, blah. The condemnation, it's the same wash, rinse, repeat that what's now known as the New Testament is going through.
Yeah.
So we're in the beginning stages.
But it's over here in.
So just like the King James version of the Bible, which is kind of like the standard go-to for the United States. What a lot of people don't realize is that it's an abridgment, and it says so. It's an abridgment. Not all the books are there. Not everything is complete. When the Book of Mormon was originally, when Joseph Smith originally started writing the Book of Mormon, it is an abridgment because the first original chapters to that book were stolen. And so he received revelations from God saying, should I go back and recreate this? He's like, and the revelation he received was no. Start where you're at and keep going.
That's not something I heard before.
So this is why we have the Book of Mormon in its current form. So has it been changed? Has it been modified with certain things, or yeah? So, so is the Bible.
That's with the Quran as well.
So and also with other books of faith. So I kind of wanted to touch on, you know, when you were speaking in a very singular path, narrative of the Bible. Again, you have so many interpretations. You have so many people who've rewritten it. You have so many different versions of the Bible. You have other books of faith, the Quran, and whatever books of faith fill in the blank. So everybody wants to. I say it like this: you have a lot of people who want to control the narrative. Okay.
That I fully agree.
Yes.
There's some other things that I do want to speak to, but that I fully agree.
Everybody wants to have their own narrative. Everybody wants to control, you know, how things supposedly happen. Sure. You know, everyone. You have several versions of the story of Adam and Eve. You have multiple interpretations. So
language barriers too.
Just like you have, you know, just like you have. No, back up. I'm not gonna say that. I like to use this a little bit of humor.
I can work with it. Yeah.
You're back in the restaurant.
You can't say Jesus is like Kool-Aid. Pick your flavor and start sipping.
I've heard that before. It's been a while.
You know, so you got a particular flavor of your theology that you're gonna roll with. It tastes good to you. You're gonna roll with it. I got my particular flavor. It tastes good. I'm gonna roll with it. And in that, you're gonna do everything to justify your narrative of life. And this is how it is. You're going to back it up with a ton of research. You're going to try to find as much historical fact to back it up and confirm what you're saying. Just like all the other Christians say, oh, we found this, and we found the supposed tomb of Jesus. Mm-hmm. We found this that correlates with the Bible, and this map correlates with this, that, and the third. So see, it's real. So we're right. Like, okay, you can have that. But like I said, we're no different. That's why we used to have these LDS apologists that would go around and start apologizing for something when somebody came up with something that was supposedly historically accurate. And I was in Africa, I was like, stop apologizing. Just because something didn't line up doesn't mean that it won't line up in the future. And guess what? A lot of stuff that we said from the Book of Mormon and what Joseph Smith saw turned out to be true, and it turned out to be was turned out. Oh well, they didn't have steel this and this time. Did a little archaeology? Yes, you did. Oh well, this animal, elephants weren't in this part of the country or this geographic area of the world at this certain time. Turned out, yes, it was. Just didn't know. So that's why I said stop apologizing for something that you don't know. I was like, so when someone comes up to me and say, oh, your religion is wrong and this is inaccurate, blah 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 blah. And all this other nonsense. I was like, possible. But reality will be my final court of appeal. So just like just to digress a little bit, a lot of people kind of laugh at me. Kind of laugh at me about the classic trope. Well, LDS people, they don't like dark skinned people, and they never allow them to ascend to the higher echelons of the church and this, that, and the third. So I was like, okay, so let's draw an analogy to that. So, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago, if you can go back that far, not that far. So we used to have these little things called black only and white only bathrooms. Oh, we used to hang people in the name of God. Oh, we used to
in your own church, you would not have been allowed for a while. I'm sorry. We infected our own troops under nuclear testing and bombing. The Tuskegee Airmen, we intentionally infected them with syphilis. So, with all the stuff that this country has done to me and to the general population,
to its own troops,
are you going to renounce your citizenship and leave the country? Oh no. So then why should I renounce my church for the wrongs that they've done in the past? That was then.
Fully agree.
This is now. the individuals, just speaking for the LDS Church, the individuals who were the leaders of that church were the right leaders at the time for that time of the church, flaws and all. Whether they were racist, whether they believed in the blood atonement,
Human beings.
If a so-called tan-skinned person mixed with a white person, that was instant death. That was instant blood atonement for everyone. Okay, even all that said and done, they were still the right leadership for the church at that time until new leadership for a new time would come up and move the church forward. You take those individuals from back then and you put them in today's time, the church would have failed. You take the individual leaders of today's time and place them with their current mentality and put them back in that time, the church would fail.
Different methodologies, what do we believe in, all different,
thus,
all will conflict.
Thus, should I hold, me being practicing the gospel of Jesus Christ, should I hate them for what they've done and what they believed in, or should I exercise the love of Christ and forgive them and thank them for for the contribution that they did to get the church to a certain point until new leadership and new philosophy would come along?
New understanding of philosophy and theology from what is there. Some of it will be disavowed and not accepted for whatever reason.
I had two questions in light of that. At what point, or who all would be wrong up until the point of Joseph Smith? Like, at what point was he correcting everyone in the entire world on theology? At what point was everybody wrong and only this group was right?
That I cannot answer.
Okay, that's fair.
But what I know, speaking from studying Joseph Smith, Joseph Smith was this is the leadership after Joseph Smith. As far as Brigham Young, he was the one who was a staunch racist, preaching that there were beings on the sun and all this other craziness, and wielding his Bowie knife when he gave his sermons and stuff like that. So he was a very interesting individual.
Sure.
Now, as far as Joseph Smith, he did in his teachings, he did believe in allowing other ethnicities to rise up through the ranks and obtain the Melchizedek priesthood. There was a story then where he saw another individual beating a slave. He came up and intervened. It's like, what's the problem? Paid for that slave, released him, and then said, hey, you're free, and do what you want to do. So, just like, another factoid, you've heard of Betty Mason?
I don't know.
She is the first. I hate the term African American because there's no such thing as that term.
I think black works. Yeah.
She was the first black woman to become a multimillionaire in what would be known as LA County. Back in those days.
Wow.
She was once upon a time an LDS slave.
Wow.
So when they started making a trek across the country to what becomes known as Utah, and they made a pit stop down in Texas for whatever reason. I don't remember the details. So anyway, at the time, even back then, California, when you went to California, there was no such thing as saying black people were allowed to be free. So the particular LDS families group that was with the main convoy, for lack of a better word, they decided to go venture in California. They were warned that, hey, blacks are free there, so you might not want to go. They ignored. They went anyway. So fast forward, they ended up in what we now known as I want to say San Antonio or Sacramento, I don't remember which one. But the point is this: the first mayor of that town was LDS, and he went by Anderson. He went by I don't remember something. It was Anderson Mason something. So anyway, fast forward, they went there, realized when they met Betty, and some of the other three blacks said, hey, you don't have to be, you're allowed to be free here. You don't have to stay up under them. Mm-hmm. So she decided to take advantage of that, and also she fell in love with someone who was happened to be there. So that particular LDS group tried to leave and get out of there and take their slaves with them. Amos and Mason sent a posse after them, who was also LDS, sent a posse after them, stopped them from leaving. Betty ended up going to court in California, legally winning her freedom. So as her way of saying thank you, she took Amos and Mason's last name, her middle name, and made it her last name. Thus becoming Betty Mason from the LDS governor, first LDS governor, a mayor. Sorry.
Wow.
So the point of that is that there's good and bad
Human beings.
in human beings, even in the same group. So my thing is this: I made it my mission to learn the good, the bad, and the ugly about the LDS Church.
Classic. Yeah.
And so
Before you made your decision.
before I made my decision, and besides, and upon research, I realized that I have ancestors who were part of the LDS Church anyway.
Wow.
When I started doing my genealogy, so they just kind of like cemented it for me. Just like, well, this is home. I have nowhere to go. So I'm just like, when I listen to other individuals from, like they say, from other gangs, other tribes, who try to talk me out of leaving my gang, come join your gang, I'm not interested.
I would.
So
I
I respect what you're saying. We are both, our path to Christ is different, but nevertheless, the destination is the same.
May I?
It does.
So,
May I interject when you're done?
okay. So when people throw, the good, the bad, the ugly in my face, I'm okay with it.
You heard it before.
I've heard it before. Just like I'm okay with the good, the bad, the ugly of what this country has done to really all of us.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I'm not packing my bags and leaving. Just like when I spoke with another LDS member who was an elder at the time, when they had the one-child policy in effect in China, and they were murdering babies left and right, and killing. I was like, what's going on in your country. I was like, are you going to renounce your citizenship and come here? He was like, well, no. Okay then. So why should you renounce the church, or why should I renounce my country? If you're not going to renounce your country with the atrocities that you're doing, I'm not going to renounce my country or my faith for the atrocities that they've done in the past. This is where you exercise God's love and exercise the gospel, show forgiveness, and move forward, and be a better conduit for Jesus Christ, and for God the Father and God the Son. That's what we did. For God the Father and God the Son, and to do their work better going forward. I'll land my plane there.
We need.
That's pretty fire. I mean, that was pretty impressive.
Good. It was really good. Conduits, image bearers. There are. If they don't mean the same thing, then there's definitely some comparisons, similarities, that sort of thing. But what I wanted to say, and I know I'm a couple minutes behind on this, is translations. There's language barriers. There's different translations because the Book of Mormon, the Bible, comprised of different books. And then, of course, there's the Quran. You've got to take into account not just what is there, but who's writing it, whether or not they can be trusted. Because this is one of those things where it's like, what's their background of them being a writer, transcriber, someone who's taking notes, writing this stuff down. So you have Joseph Smith, who's the founder, as well as the person who received the revelation. And for Quran, I haven't really read much of it.
Muhammad. The Quran, the Book of Mormon, both of them were an individual. God spoke to them, and they wrote as they were being told.
I was going to say I don't know if the book is about what Muhammad said, or if it was more or less about. Okay, if the revelation came to Muhammad, then it would be in his words, his thoughts, or if
I haven't read the entire Book of Mormon, but I have read the Quran. I think actually finishing my class on Islam in RTS at the moment, and it's the compilation of the Quran is a little bit more complicated. All the writings is primarily from Muhammad.
From him and not his followers.
Correct. The Hadith was the followers.
Okay,
that
thank
comes
you.
later.
Yeah.
But for him, it's still a wild compilation of stuff. A lot of things are put together by people afterwards.
Yes.
It's his writings, but they organize it except for the first chapter. Everything else is done like sequence. The larger ones at the beginning, smaller ones at the end. Fitna, that was the first. That's it. Yeah. The fatwa. That's the beginning. That blessed be the God our blessed be Allah, our Father,
Yes.
and Muhammad as prophet. Like that's the beginning of everything, and then we go from there. But going forward to the
You get what I was saying,
Yes.
though, as far as the translation,
best trust. But the thing about it is,
the trustworthiness of who's dictating,
Yes.
saying, writing down, describing what.
and that's where I do think the Old Testament and the New Testament are unique compared to the Book of Mormon and the Quran. Again, I've only read parts of the book. I know both books are a lot shorter than both of them, right? But the point of it is, especially the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, it's over 1,500 years. And in the 1,500 years, what you're compiling together is from different scribes or different traditions writing things down. And so you can always trace it back.
I miss my Jewish friend because he could have added a lot to this.
Yeah, I mean, the first 5 books we attribute to Moses, but it was a compilation of Moses and scribes later on. And then you have the Nevi'im by the prophets. Some of the prophets prophesied who are writing down their prophecies. So it's like it's a little more complicated because you're talking about a nation. We have the Constitution. We have the letters of Benjamin Franklin. That's what it was for them. They were a nation. They were at the nation. They were recording history, keeping track of their lineages, of their genealogies. So we think the genealogy, why are the genealogy in the Bible? Because it's a history book of an entire nation, and they're recording their constitutions.
The word nation today would mean something very different back then.
Sure, even that would be true because even then you have the tribe of Benjamin, tribe of Levi, tribe of Judah. You have all these different tribes that come together to compose united tribes, which would have been Israel, the kingdom, right? And they come together to do that, but you compile all their works together. And then you have the Ketuvim, the poetry books, which is done by the songmaster, the people of the council going to the king, the stories within the narratives being told. You have the very end there with the Chronicles summing up the entire story. So the Old Testament is kind of unique in that because the reason both the Jews and the Christians trust it is because it's a history book, it's a poetry book, it's so many things at once of an entire nation for thousands of years. But the difference with the New Testament, where things get really interesting, the New Testament is just eyewitnesses coming together, compiling stuff together to teach churches. So the New Testament, you have Matthew and John as eyewitnesses. They saw Jesus. They're writing down what they saw. Luke and Mark are writing on behalf of other apostles, writing down what they saw. And then you carry on the Apostle Paul. He's going to different churches and he's listening to different apostles and writing down those things to be read in the churches for what we are claiming to believe as Christianity. That's why that was more in debate.
Theophilus was someone outside of all of that who was interested.
Theophilus Luke was writing to him.
Writing to it, yes, but he was outside of all that.
He was probably a pastor. So that's why when you open up the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts, both of them were written by St. Luke. He was writing to Theophilus to prepare him to teach what the Christian stance is.
Was it confirmed who wrote the book of Acts? Or what was that one book that was people were stuck on for years as far as who wrote
Hebrews.
it? Okay, never mind.
Hebrews is the one in debate. but Luke and
I thought that was Acts.
Well, Acts, it's part 1 and 2 of Luke's writings to Theophilus. Both of them begin, Dear Theophilus.
I got that mixed up. That's my fault.
Yeah, but the point we're making, the debate, the reason we all hold to the Old Testament is there's a lot more history and consistency behind that. The New Testament, the debate begins because it's just the apostles. I still would argue the apostles were well-trained men that knew the scriptures, because that's why a lot of the New Testament is just quoting the Old Testament. A lot of it is, because they're affirming that and they're trying to carry on the faith forward in the revelation of Jesus in light of what the prophets talked about. And so that's why we affirm that. And I also point to the fact that Christianity saves the world, because we've been seeing wherever Christianity goes, it stops paganism, it stops child sacrifice, it stops the orgies, stops body mutilations, it stops those things.
Taking care of widows and
orphans,
adoptions.
Yes.
Like there's a lot
Christianity
as far
does
as
that.
giving and doing for the community.
Yes. So I think it truly does, not only in the writings but in the tradition, it carries forward what God revealed in the Old Testament. And then with the Book of Mormon or the Quran, when I see Islam, I don't see the same success. I see failures in a lot of ways.
I've heard there's a lot of hatred with that, and I've been hesitant on sitting down and reading it because I was like, what am I going to let into my life as far as that goes? But
Quran is hard. The Book of Mormon is a little bit different there because I do see some good fruit. There has been some. But primarily what I saw, especially at the very beginning, and you confirmed at the very beginning, there was so much conflict. Same thing with the Quran. You could argue both sides.
Same thing with Christianity.
But I wouldn't say the beginning of Christianity. Christianity, afterwards, I could see some struggles. But at the very beginning, when I look at the book of the New Testament, I see a way of saving the world. That's what I immediately see, because when you see
This is on the New Testament.
It says that God is a
Because
very
that's-
jealous God for his spouse, for his people.
Because that's to go back to what we were talking about earlier. Is like I would not hold Mormonism accountable just on Mormons. I would not hold Christianity accountable just on Christians. I hold it accountable to their holy books. That's what I hold them accountable to. And if I hold them accountable to that, there's an objective what is real and what is not. And so that's what I'm holding them accountable to. Now, to be fair, it's helpful to look at the fruit of people's lives. It's very helpful to do that. But if these people, I'm doing this, but it does not measure up to the book,
Yeah.
then it's like, are you really following your religion?
Well, that's why you can call them you can call them out for being a hypocrite.
Exactly. That's when that's a proper term. But the reason that's important is it goes back to what we talked about earlier. What is the gospel? You were talking about the gospel earlier. If we disagree on something, it's one thing. But if Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no man can be Father except by me. If we know there's a place like the eternal lake of fire, and then there is a new world, new creation by following God, it's a big cost to be wrong. And because of that, I think that's why we're all here. We're trying to find the truth. But to know the truth, if we believe the lie, there's a big risk there. And that should call us to not be with the
To be
mentality of
careful.
saying like, it's okay, you believe what you believe, I believe what I believe. If we truly believe that, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now. We genuinely believe that we are right, and we want to convince the other person of that belief. Now, obviously, to say you need to make a decision here, I can't make you do that. Only God can do that. But we both
Present
here-
evidence.
Yes, we're both here to convince the other person. That's why we're here.
I'm not here to convince you of anything. I was just here to have a conversation.
Well, here's
I wasn't here to convince. That was not my intention.
Okay.
I was being sincere.
I was wrong. There.
I was like, I wasn't here to convert you. Like, hey, come check it.
hang on, pause. All right, let's continue.
To give us some kind of direction, to bring it to some kind of conclusion, I did want to ask, what is the gospel?
What is the gospel?
Yes.
As far as my interpretation.
Sure. Okay. Pause before we go. I do want to
That's a very
come back to that.
broad-
So people come to my interpretation, our interpretation. When we come to our holy books, so obviously I want you to answer from how you are understanding your holy books. Yes, I do want that answer. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that when it comes to different interpretations, we don't believe our interpretation is right. Like we all speak English, and we will write something down. It's meant to be understood a certain way.
You're not talking about preference. You're talking about
What the text is saying,
accuracy.
who is the author,
Okay.
and how is he writing it. Because I can take any book, and if I just say small mythology, I can do what I want with it, but that's not true. Even if it is mythology, it was written by somebody to communicate a certain
Well,
point. So
there's-
everything has only one interpretation.
There's the other point too that someone made in a different video. I take no credit. The word biblical, the term biblical, is thrown around, and people are like, "Oh, it's biblical, therefore it's accurate."
Yeah, that's also different.
No.
Yes, because I would actually say a lot of Wiccan things are biblical. They're perverting it, but they're taking scripture and making it their own understanding. Like turning making Satan the good guy.
Half truth.
Exactly. But
Well, just like you got over 34,000 versions of Christianity. Pick your
Yes.
flavor. Just like, he has his interpretation, but you got someone who believes in shaking rattlesnakes in your face and
it's weird.
and drinking strychnine,
when you read
to prove their faith.
And that's why you have to
So-
take the text on what it's saying, like understanding what the text says and understand it from Paul's perspective or John's perspective, not by
Perspective, context,
Exactly.
any sort of historical background, and when they're talking about anything like, there's God, what is the heart of God, and,
Yes.
and all of that. Understanding applied with some of these things really adds,
it's helpful.
I was going to say a benefit or a blessing.
Yeah.
But it also has a burden too, because it's like, oh, now I know this, now I must act upon this in some way.
Right.
This way.
It calls to action. But what from
So, you asked from a broad perspective, I'm going to give you a broad answer.
Go for
So, the gospel of Jesus Christ is literally going back to the basis of what I said. Simply making God make sense to everyone, to everyone I meet. Speaking to you on a practical level, how to apply it, how to implement it into your life. You can sit here and beautifully explain the history and this was that and John said this and Paul said that and Genesis. Wonderful, that's nice. Okay, how do you apply it? How do you make that make sense? Okay, we can throw thousands of years of Bible verses and stories, but if it doesn't make sense, if you're not applying it in your life, if you equate it to something of going to like a Tony Robbins thing where rah, 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 and blah, 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 and you leave feeling good, and then an hour later you're back to who you are. What have you accomplished? So it's kind of like the same thing going on Sunday. You can stand up there and give a great sermon and break down the history and all this, that, and the third. Okay, but once I leave, how am I applying that? And to me, this is what the gospel is for me through the Church of Jesus Christ. It's teaching people how to apply it now through action, through our performance. Again, we give God form through our body. We give God through our action. We give God performance. This is why the church, even though I don't understand. I personally don't understand. We get a lot of flack for it, but this is why we have the largest warehouse when it comes to food, when it comes to feeding people and offering supplies. This is why the church buys up and owns farms and stuff to grow the food. So like with Hurricane Helene, and all these other, we have volunteers.
Yeah, thank you for all the work you did. Yeah.
And we go up there and we help out. We help out each other, and on a mental, physical, spiritual level, we help. That to me, that's living the gospel on a practical level. We help each other find jobs. We help each other get off drugs. We help each other get away from the porn addiction. Our members are not perfect. They have problems. They have marital problems. They have drug problems. They have pornography problems. We're not just because of all that doesn't mean like we're the holy God. We're still human. Base level, they're human. Humans have flaws. Humans fall to the weakness of the devil. But so living the gospel is helping guide our own individuals as well as individuals outside the church to the word of Jesus Christ on a practical level. I'm here to make God make sense. Okay, when I quote about how do I apply that? How do I use that in my life? How do I, what's an actionable step? At least one step that can help improve my life. Go ahead.
I was going to say the Mormon Church gives a place for men and to help integrate them into a community of sorts. That is incredibly important for men in today's world, which is hard to find outside of the Mormon Church. Fellowship is what it leads back to and what I understand. The church in today outside of the Mormon is failing in that regards because men like myself, it's like, where are we going? What are we doing? All these questions, very few answers, and all of that.
So that's what we do. We not only do we help our men, we also help our women. To me, the gospel of Jesus Christ, as long as we are in our current reality, under our current circumstances, we need to apply the gospel to our situations. Let me just focus on men by developing authentic manhood. Okay, so not falling susceptible to that it's okay to be a guy. It's okay to be head of your household. It's okay. It's normal.
Absolutely.
It's normal to stand up for what you believe in, and not fall victim to this snowflake society. And you want to go outside? Okay.
Yeah, let's take it outside. Love Tyson and all, but we need a little bit of a. It's a little hard to concentrate in there. We're gonna be right out here. Yeah, we're out here. Okay.
So to me, this is bringing the gospel down to an actionable level, to where it's okay to speak your faith. It's okay to defend your faith.
Yeah.
And it's okay if someone disagrees with your faith. That's not a problem. If you're truly solid in where you stand, someone coming from a different perspective shouldn't shake your faith, shouldn't shake your foundation. To me, that's what the gospel is. I'm solid in my foundation. I'm solid in my interpretation, my God, and
Understanding.
and my understanding of what God the Father, God the Son is. If you wish to disagree with that, that's okay.
If people disagree,
I'm not upset. You're okay. I'm okay. We're okay. Again, the path to the enlightenment of God has different many paths, but the destination is the same.
why people
If we're referring to the same God, so
why people disagree though is incredibly important, because some people it's going to be from a place of pride, or it's a place of struggle, anger, depression, where it's like this is what's happening and we're responding in the moment. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that as well.
Yeah. Okay.
because again, once you're solid, because I've seen people in our church who've been generations in, and someone is say, just for not say you literally, so for example, someone like you comes along, pokes a few holes in something, and then the whole thing is shattered and they leave, and I'm like, really? That's all it took?
They didn't really believe what they claimed to
You know,
believe.
it's like
Well-
so your faith was really that weak. So it means you didn't believe it. Your faith wasn't solid in the first place.
The story of the seeds.
Even if you're 3-4 generations in, your faith was that shallow. Here I am, first generation, and I made up my mind.
The parable of the
people-
sower of the seeds refers to where the seeds are scattered, where they landed, and how some people will respond a certain way. Like, some people fell away too quickly because, trials and tribulations popped up, and they're like, oh, we can't handle this, or whatever. Like, growth matters. People have to respond. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah. I mean, you said you're Presbyterian.
Yeah.
I mean, I could easily do a deep dive into the history of Presbyterian religion and easily poke holes and find contradictions everywhere, and that's okay. No one's faith. So no one's faith is perfect. As far as
the aspect of
you have
denomination.
you have to ask yourself. So
I guess
is it God's word
Yeah.
that isn't perfect, or is it the structure or the conduit or the individuals that information comes through is imperfect?
The way you phrased that was more helpful. I probably should say my faith
Well-
is Christianity. The structure is Presbyterianism.
The structure can cause conflicts and the
Sure.
schisms, the whole, we will separate at this point because we disagree, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. There's a Catholic structure, there's a Presbyterian structure, there's a Methodist structure,
Yeah.
but we all claim Christianity.
Yeah, we all claim,
Yeah.
So,
We all hold to Christ, we all hold to the doctrine in it. It's like, but then people break down to we cannot accept that, we will reject that, and it's just that really kind of makes Christianity in every form of
that's
it.
why you have over 34 different forms, 34,000 different versions of Christianity.
Nah.
So-called
I want to mention one last thing. So you answered about the gospel. I wanted to also answer about the gospel. The good news, so the gospel Greek for good news. And St. John and Jesus spoke about the good news coming, good news of the kingdom. So I believe that the gospel is the good news of the salvation of the world. And so what does that look like? We believe that that's fully understood in the person of Jesus Christ, Christian followers of Christ. And so how does that look like, right? Practically, because that's the point that you would get about making, right? If we're going to save the world, how do you do that? What does that look like? Well, the whole idea of that was
One day at a time.
I would say one soul at a time.
One
Yes.
soul at a time, one day at a time. Yeah.
And that works through how? Because if I work really, really hard and do my best, will that save me? In Christianity, we say no. We say about our own works, we are sinners that rebelled against God. And God is a God of justice. If he was not, then why would we want justice against the evil? Why do we want justice against the serial killer, the murderer, or the rapist, or the guy that's stealing things? We want justice because it's a reflection as image bearers of God, of who God is. He wants justice. The problem with
At the
that
same
is,
time, we're supposed to love them
we'll get to that part.
and forgive them at the
Because
same
if
time.
God loves people, then he hates serial killers. If God loves people, he hates pedophiles. If he loves people, he must hate, because love produces hate against those that would hurt other people. That's why we still want justice even in love. The question is, how does God's justice understood in light of forgiveness? Because the term forgiveness, if any judge forgives an evildoer, he is not a good judge. Because if someone did something wrong, and he forgives him, wipes his slate clean, that is an unjust judge. It's not forgiveness; it's called injustice.
Bias, prejudges.
Exactly. So
That's in human law.
no, it's the human law because we're image bearers of God because we're reflecting who God is. So we must begin the good news of Christ with the bad news before the good news. Because the gospel to be good news, why is it good news? Because the bad news is so bad. Because God's bad news is that all mankind who's ever lived are in rebellion against Him and deserve condemnation forever.
Permanent condemnation. Like, this isn't like a stain. This is like...
It's bad. Like our nature, like I said, our souls and our bodies, both united to Adam. Not only did we have his nature, we sinned with him. We're guilty of that sin. We're united to his nature with. And because of that sin, we are at odds with God. So how can the question that...
So we're guilty by association.
Exactly.
This ties back in the previous conversation that we've had.
So the question then becomes about to understand the good news, right? How can God be just and forgiving at the same time? Because no judge can just forgive anybody. How does that work? And that's when we come to Jesus Christ.
Well, sacrifices and then Jesus, which was the fulfillment.
Yes. By his perfect life, by his death, the giving of his life, he was a sacrifice to satisfy the wrath of God. Now,
and other conditions that may apply.
Now again, the difference whether or not we believe Jesus Christ is God or not, we can have that debate. But the number one thing here is that Jesus Christ, he laid down his life. And I think it makes more sense if God took his own wrath on our behalf. I do believe that's, but for my stance, I would claim that Jesus is God. God himself taking his own wrath for his people on the cross. He satisfies his wrath, and not only that, but he lived a perfect life and reclaimed his life in resurrection to give us perfection. So therefore, now I'm just, not because I am just, because Christ makes me just. Therefore, the divine judge of the universe, all the wrong I've ever done is satisfied in the death of Christ, and all my righteousness is the righteousness that Christ did in his perfect life. It's God, the perfect judge, only sees the good works that he did on my behalf. And now, because of that, my new nature united to Christ is now growing, and in eternity, what's going to happen from that? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, Galatians chapter 5.
Growth, future, everything tied to a better tomorrow. That's what I believe.
Yes, and it makes us better.
Hope for a better tomorrow.
Better. That's how that works. That's the good news of God's kingdom. It's not like the kingdom of the world. Kingdom of the world, they put a sword to your throat and say, submit. But God's kingdom, his sword is put to the heart, and he changes the heart. And now his subjects are willfully bowing the knee.
It talks about how the sword divides, it cuts between all of that and it divides, but it's more of like it reveals what is and what is here, physical, and then what is spiritual. I want to throw that interpretation out there is because what is of this world is not of God's.
Yes, that's why the important thing about the gospel itself, it is a message, and the message is the good news of the kingdom of God on earth. That is the good news. And as we understood, the beginning of the good news is the forgiveness of sins brought about by Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ alone on our behalf. That's what I would say the gospel is. Everything you're saying is I think the fruit of the gospel about our lives and how we seek to apply what the Bible's saying into people's lives, how we show love and compassion and care, how we hold people accountable and actually do justice, don't let serial killers run free. Like we establish governments to stop evil. Like all of those work together. Establish
order more so than to stop evil.
And
because the idea is evil would be associated with something like chaos and people exacting their own will in however way they see fit, and they're just like middle finger to everyone else.
Yeah, we don't just let the Aztecs keep on do their human sacrifices.
That goes beyond order, law and order. That goes into something else.
Because we believe in God. And so because of all those things working together, it begins with the forgiveness of sins rooted in Christ. And our first action is to call people to repent and believe.
I was going to say the recognition of our faults, our failure, our fallen nature.
Yes.
And then what you're saying. That's what I would have to throw in there first.
Yeah. That's repentance, right? Yeah.
Understanding and then, oops, forgive me.
Yes.
Keeping it simple.
So, like I said, I agree with most of it.
Yeah.
But like I said, at the same time, we apply it, we show it, we live it.
Yes.
So through our actions, through what we do, we guide people to come to us. We don't force them. We have conversation. And say, but like I said,
I can't make anybody believe in God. I can't do that.
You can bribe others.
But I can.
Okay.
No, we believe in God.
Yeah.
That's not even a question. I'm just like, as someone say, hello, it's called the Church of Jesus Christ for a reason. But like I said, I'll give an example. When you have individuals who are, regardless of what they're going through, like I said, when we show up, for example, when we show up and we help them out, with whatever house, or say in a disaster or whatever, or just come and talk to them. We don't care that we're not going to let the fact that you may have a criminal record stop
Sure.
us from having a conversation with you.
How do you have forgiveness of blessing?
dialogue
or there's a domestic thing going on, or there's other areas of your life that are in tragic need of examination.
Yeah.
Examination is perfect.
So when these individuals, they say, they pray, it's like, send someone to help me, how do I get out of this, blah, blah, blah. And for some strange reason, we knock on the door and we start answering their questions.
Yeah.
It's just like, and then the irony is this, like, well, I love it when I kind of find it amusing. It's like when they start to reject us, or I ask the question, it's like, didn't you just say you were praying, you were looking for someone to give you some answers? Well, yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we answered your question. We answered your questions. You couldn't refute it. So you have a problem with getting your question answered, but the deliverance of it is what you have a problem with. Is that what you're saying?
That's funny.
So it's like I was like, I want this help, I want this situation, but I want it customized to my liking. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people have who are of Christian faith or not. When they look for an answer and it's delivered to them, they don't like the way it came. Or even better, God being a true teacher, I'm not going to give you the answer, but I'll lead you to it.
Yeah.
I'll show you the way, but you still got to put in some work.
Of course.
If it's free, it wouldn't mean much.
Like, faith is a powerful thing, but you're constantly praying while you're swimming, hey, God, help me, and 3 boats go by.
Oh yeah. God, even God's like, look, baby, don't be stupid. We always like say, Jesus and God and Jesus always are practical jokes. Is that got to be like, yo, G, what up, Jay? Watch this.
Oh man.
Poof. Pop quiz.
Yeah.
So.
They do have their humor, and I wish there was more of it shown in the Bible. Like, you can look it up as far as like what people think God was joking about. I know Moses did that with God on a couple occasions too. Like, are you off sleeping, God? Like, what are you doing? Where are you? I think that was Elijah. I'm sorry, not Moses. That was Elijah.
Hey, no,
it's kind of like that joke going back to what you're saying. Just like, oh God, help me! They're like take Hurricane Helene for example. Yeah. Someone's sitting in their house. The house is flooding. God, help me! Here comes a boat. Oh no! Come on, get in. It's like, oh no, I'm waiting for God to save me. The boat takes off. The boat gets high. The flood gets high. You're up on the 2nd floor. God, please save me. Here comes a bigger boat.
That reminds me.
Hey, get in.
Yeah.
No, I'm waiting for God to save me. Now you're on top of the roof.
Yeah.
And here comes the helicopter. No, I'm waiting for God to save me.
Then
you die, and you get up to heaven, and you're like, why didn't you save me? Like, I sent you 2 boats, and I sent you a helicopter. Hello? It goes back to what I said. Our human form gives us form. Our performance gives God performance. I was using my boys to come get you, and you weren't listening. So you got to learn to listen.
There's a very sad story, but the point of that would be careful who you listen to, and this was told by someone else, and it's a very sad story. I will summarize it. I forget where it's from on YouTube, but it basically, a whole boat ended up taking up water, and kids at the bottom level, you seeing through the windows, they're like, help us, help us. You were listening to the broad speaker. Everything was handled poorly, by the way, by the person in charge, the I forget her name, but she was in charge. It was handled poorly. Half of the kids on it died because they listened to the broad speaker repeating the message of stay in your cabins, hope will come, whatever form that was. And the others who are realizing, common sense, like we need to get out of here, disregarded that message, and we're saved.
Yeah.
And it's very heartbreaking. This was over in China. I don't remember, it wasn't a shipwreck. It was some tragedy. It was recent too in the past year. I want to say it was tied with South Korea. It was tied with South Korea. One of their cruise liners, I think.
Parker, I got to say, this has been a very, very insightful conversation. I mean, I really do thank you for that. It was a lot more than what I got from the other group of 5 boys that were at the war. Thank you for that. So it's definitely a lot more.
I'll pause it here so Tyson may want to, he may want to add in a couple of thoughts as well. All right. That concludes the fellowship here together. I hope you all enjoyed it. Asked Tyson if he wanted to hop in there. He just said he was just, another time. So we're gonna have to have we're gonna have more conversations more later. Stay tuned. Hope you all enjoyed.